My name is Mary. I'm 23 years old, and I just graduated with a degree in finance from a university in Denver. I'm living in the house I grew up in, a charming little place with a white porch, a pale blue wooden fence, and a lavender garden my mother used to tend to every day. But let me tell you where it all began, and why this peaceful home became the centre of everything I never saw coming. My mother passed away 5 years ago from pancreatic cancer. She died just as I turned 18, right before my high school graduation. It was the darkest time of my life. My mum was thoughtful, sharp, and quietly strong. Ever since I was little, she planned everything meticulously. She worked as a senior tax analyst at a financial firm, and thanks to her savings and smart money management, she bought this house even before she met my father. "This house is yours, no matter what happens," she once told me, her voice calm. Even as her body struggled through chemotherapy, my parents used to love each other, at least I used to think so. They got married when I was 3, and their marriage lasted nearly a decade before it fell apart when I was 12. My father, John, closed his bedroom door, packed his grey suitcase, and quietly left the house on a Tuesday afternoon. No goodbyes, no tears, no fights. He just never came back. I don't remember exactly how my mother reacted that night, but I do remember the look in her eyes when I asked, "Where did Dad go, Mom?" She stayed silent for a long while, then softly said, "To find another life, sweetheart, after..." The divorce, my father quickly remarried a woman named Rachel, someone with a sweet smile but eyes that always seemed to assess the worth of everyone in the room. A year later, they had a daughter named Hannah. She's 11 years younger than me, with rosy skin and bright brown eyes just like Dad's. I thought I would love Hannah, but it was hard to connect with a child raised in a family I never truly belonged to. My dad lived with his new family in a rental house in the suburbs of Santa Fe. Occasionally, I was invited over on weekends, but it always felt like I was an uninvited guest. Rachel was polite, always smiling and asking, "What would you like for dinner, Mary?" But her tone came with a look that suggested she hoped I'd decline. My dad would usually excuse himself, heading upstairs for work or pretending to be buried in papers. Hannah was the star of every mealtime conversation, and I just sat there quietly eating my pasta, trying not to let anyone notice I was counting down the minutes. Even so, my mother never let me feel unloved. When her condition worsened, she poured everything into making sure I'd have a secure future. Before she passed, she updated her will, leaving the entire house to me. She even had her lawyer send me a copy, along with a handwritten letter. "This house is the home you can always return to. Never let anyone make you feel like you don't deserve it," and I believed her, until things started to change, after I allowed someone back into my life. You might think I was too naive, maybe I believed in family for too long, but I'm going to tell you everything, and once you understand what happened next, maybe you won't blame me. After my mother's funeral, everything felt like a blur, like a sad dream with no end. I lived quietly in the empty house for a few weeks, wandering through rooms that still carried her scent, peppermint tea in the evenings and the soft perfume she wore to work. I remember the feeling clearly, alone, paralysed, and unsure what to do next. My college plans were ready, scholarships accepted, but my heart was hollow. That's when Dad called. "Mary, I think maybe you shouldn't be alone right now," he said over the phone, his voice low and unfamiliar, like he was playing a role he didn't quite know. "Rachel, Hannah, and I can come stay with you for a while, just so you don't feel too lonely. How does that sound?" I didn't know how to say no. Even though I'd never been close to his new family, I didn't want to face dinners with only the clink of silverware and long wordless evenings in the living room. And so, they came. Dad parked his familiar silver SUV in front of the gate, one Saturday morning. Rachel was the first to step out, holding a basket of fruit like it was a casual family visit, not a support mission for someone grieving her mother. Hannah, now 12, hopped out in light-up sneakers, dragging a giant pink suitcase almost bigger than her. The first few days were surprisingly calm. Rachel cooked, Hannah helped me fold laundry, and Dad fixed the squeaky storage room door that had bugged me for years. I almost started to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could be a family, even if just temporarily. One morning, while I was sitting on the porch sipping coffee, Dad pulled up a chair beside me. He didn't beat around the bush. "Mary, I have a suggestion." He set his mug down and looked at me with eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. "You're going to college in Boulder, right? It's far, and the house would be sitting here empty. I was thinking maybe we could stay here and take care of it for you. I'll cover all the expenses. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." I looked out at the garden where Mum once planted sunflowers in neat rows to shield the kitchen from the afternoon sun. My heart clenched. I didn't want to sell the house, but leaving it empty felt wrong too. Mum had done everything to keep this place for me, and now, if they were just staying temporarily, just to look after it, maybe it made sense. I nodded. "Okay, but everything stays the same. This is still my house." Rachel beamed. "Of course. We're just guests, Mary." I should have paid more attention to that word. Guests. It might have meant more than I realised. Before leaving, I cleaned out my mum's room. I carefully packed away her notebooks, family photos, and her favourite tea set into the attic. I locked the room tightly, keeping it as a sacred space I wasn't ready to share with anyone. 4 years passed in the blink of an eye. I lived in the dorm, then moved into a small apartment near campus when I started my internship. Every holiday I came home, the home that belonged to my mum, to me. But Rachel now called it our family home. She decorated the Christmas tree as early as November, hung pictures of Hannah in the hallway, and changed the curtains to pastel shades I never liked. But I turned a blind eye. I thought they were only staying temporarily. I'd be back soon, and everything would go back to its place. I didn't know that during all that time, things were quietly shifting, and that when I returned after graduation, ready to begin a new chapter of my life, I'd find myself standing before a door that no longer opened for me. It all started with a lock, and ended with a betrayal I never saw coming. How far do you think a family would go to take something that was never theirs to begin with? College years passed quickly. I got used to my new rhythm in Boulder, rushing, to class in the mornings, studying late at the library, and sometimes picking up shifts at a cafe near campus to cover living expenses. Every holiday break, I packed my bags and caught the earliest bus home, to my mother's house, now occupied by my father's entire family. The first time I returned was during Thanksgiving of freshman year. I still remember the hesitant feeling when I stepped off the bus, clutching my backpack like I was walking back into a stranger's house. But Rachel opened the door with a bright smile, hands dusted in flour. "Mary, you're home." "The pumpkin pie is almost ready," she exclaimed, pulling me inside like I was an essential part of the family. Inside, Hannah rushed up to hug me, the soft scent of her shampoo lingering in her brown curls. "Look, I made thank you cards for class," she said, showing me a paper covered in messy drawings and wobbly letters. I smiled sincerely. In that moment, the walls between me and this new family seemed to crumble. The visits after that were surprisingly warm. Rachel made my favourite lasagna, even though I never told her it was my favourite. "Your mum said you loved it growing up," she said gently, leaving me speechless. The kitchen, once my mum's space, now buzzed with laughter, the smell of toasted bread and everyday conversations. Hannah grew older and started calling me Sister Mary instead of my half-sister. She dragged me to her school plays, texted me for opinions on party dresses, and once messaged me at midnight to talk about a classmate she had a crush on. I was surprised at myself for starting to look forward to coming home, as if I truly belonged somewhere again. Even Rachel made me feel closer. She invited me to her book club meetings with the neighbours. I didn't think I'd enjoy chatting about dramatic romance novels, but it turned out to be fun, sipping tea and laughing with women who knew how to tell stories. "You and I have similar tastes in books," Rachel said with a smile once, her eyes so warm that I started to believe the cracks in the past were long gone. My father stayed the same, quiet, sometimes distant, but always there when I needed him. He'd ask about my classes, my internship, and occasionally drove me to the train station or airport. "You're making your mother proud," he said once as he dropped me off for school. I didn't cry, but my hand on the suitcase trembled. Some nights I lay in my old room, now a secondary guest room, staring at the ceiling and wondering, maybe I finally have a real family. Everything felt so peaceful. Maybe too peaceful. The kind of stillness that hides a storm slowly brewing, even though the house changed. New curtains here, a modern dining table there, Hannah's photos on the staircase. I convinced myself it was normal. People move on, people evolve, and... I kept quiet. I ignored Rachel calling the house ours. I ignored Dad's sideways glance whenever I mentioned Mum. I ignored Hannah's innocent comment, "When I live here with my husband someday." I thought they were just being thoughtless. I was wrong. When senior year approached its end, I received a job offer from a major financial firm in Denver. I called home, excited to share the news. Rachel squealed with joy. "So you'll be moving back in for good? We'll be together again like before?" she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I smiled, but my heart tightened. Something felt off, though I couldn't name it yet. Little did I know that just weeks later, when I returned with a suitcase, a job contract, and dreams of a fresh start, the doors would no longer open the same way, and the faces that once called me family would look at me completely differently. Came back on a quiet morning in early June, with soft sunlight and warm summer wind whispering through the trees. I had graduated less than a week ago, and my car was full of everything I'd worked for over 4 years. My official job in Denver was starting in 2 weeks, and I was excited to return to the one place I had always called home, my mother's house, the one place that once made me feel safer than anywhere else. But the moment I stepped out of the car, I knew something was wrong. The white gate I had repainted in my sophomore year was now replaced by a shiny new iron one with a keypad lock. The lavender bushes my mother once planted had been torn out and replaced with neatly trimmed roses, cold and perfect. A strange chill crept into my chest as I approached the front door, holding my old key. I inserted the key, but it wouldn't turn. I tried again and again. Confusion turned into anxiety. I knocked. No answer. After a few moments of just standing there, stunned, I pulled out my phone and called my dad. No one picked up. I tried Rachel. Still nothing. Finally, I rang the doorbell. Nearly a full minute passed before the door creaked. Open. Rachel stood there in a silk robe, her hair curled neatly, lips slightly glossed. Her eyes, when she saw me, held no surprise, only a quiet displeasure I couldn't quite understand. "Mary," she said flatly, like I was a delivery driver who showed up too early. "Why was the lock changed?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Oh, we just had it updated. There have been a few break-ins in the neighborhood, so we decided to improve security." No one told me. "And this is my house," I said firmly, feeling my palms start to sweat. Before Rachel could respond, my father appeared from inside. He wore a button-down and khakis, still holding his ceramic coffee mug, but when he saw me, he froze, the cup nearly slipping from his hand. "You're back? Yes. I told you I'd be coming this week. You remember that, right?" He nodded slowly, then glanced at Rachel. "Mary, come inside. We need to talk." We stepped into the study, the room where my mom used to read every night. Now, redecorated with a strange rug and a few lifeless abstract paintings. I sat down, heart pounding. "What's going on?" I asked directly. He sighed. Then he began. He told me that after my mother passed, he wanted Rachel to feel secure, so he lied, said the house had once been shared property, and that after the divorce it became his. He told Rachel that I was only allowed to stay temporarily, out of kindness, and once I left for college, the house would belong to his new family. I sat there in shock, like the air had been sucked from the room. "You... what?" "You know this house was Mum's. She bought it before she met you. She left it to me. There's a will." My dad looked down, silent. "Rachel thinks this house is... ours. Theirs," I asked, my voice almost breaking. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Things were messy back then. I just wanted to keep the family stable." "Stable?" I stood up abruptly. "By taking my house and pretending it doesn't belong to me." He pulled a set of keys from his pocket. "These are the new ones." I was going to tell Rachel the truth. I just hadn't found the right moment. The right moment. I let out a bitter laugh. Was the right moment when I came home and got treated like a stranger at my own front door. I grabbed the keys, my hands shaking with anger. Everything had seemed so peaceful that I didn't notice the cracks widening beneath the surface. Now they had burst wide open. "Mary!" my dad called out as I walked out of the room. I didn't look back. In the hallway, I came face to face with Rachel, arms crossed, eyes sharp as ice. "What did you say to him?" she asked. I didn't have to say anything. "This is my house and I'm staying," I replied, my voice firmer than ever. But I knew this wasn't over. Once the truth is revealed, masks fall off. And when that happens, I needed to be ready for the storm brewing beneath the surface. Since that tense conversation in the office, the atmosphere in the house completely changed. I could feel the coldness in every glance, every deliberately loud step echoing through the hallways that used to be peaceful. When I returned home, I thought I was just confronting a lie. But in the days that followed, I realized I wasn't just betrayed. I was being slowly pushed out of the very house that bore my name. Rachel no longer pretended to be friendly. Every morning, she took over the kitchen, cooking, blasting music, filling every corner with her presence. If I walked in to grab a glass of water or make coffee, she would immediately block the sink or stand in front of the fridge as if I was some intruder. "Oh, Mary, are you using the kitchen?" she'd say in a syrupy, sweet voice. "You probably didn't notice, but I just cleaned the floors. Dirty shoes." Her tone was polite on the surface, but sharp enough to make me want to turn away. And Hannah, the same girl who once called me Sister Mary with such excitement, now barely looked at me. Every time I walked into the living room, she'd pick up her phone and scroll, occasionally making comments loud enough for me to hear. "Mum, I don't get why someone is still living here and hasn't left yet." Or worse, "She used up all the milk again. Guess she's planning to freeload forever." I used to think Hannah cared about me, that age and blood didn't matter as much as sincerity. But maybe I was just naive, or maybe my trust was being suffocated bit by bit in the very place I once called home. Meals started coming without a fourth plate. Strangely, 3 portions were always laid out neatly, but mine never appeared. One day I asked softly while Rachel was setting the table, "Can I help with anything?" She turned and smiled. "Oh, I didn't know you were still here. I figured you'd be out eating with friends." I didn't reply. I went back to my room, made instant noodles, and ate in silence while laughter drifted from the living room. Dad barely said anything. He tried to make peace by leaving a box of cookies on my desk, or secretly filling up my car's gas tank in the mornings. But whenever I tried to talk seriously, he looked down or pretended to take a call. I began to feel like I was living off someone's pity in the very house my mother left me, in the very space that was once mine, once the only home I had left. Didn't invite friends over anymore, nor did I feel like decorating my old room again. I spent most of my time out, working at cafes, preparing for my first day at the new job. One day I came home earlier than usual and heard laughter from the living room. Rachel and 2 of her friends were sipping wine, chatting cheerfully. "This house is amazing. I still can't believe it wasn't always yours," one friend said. Rachel laughed. "Patience gets you everything." I froze behind the kitchen door, my hand clutching my folder. Something inside me cracked. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was the clear realization that I was being erased from my own life, piece by people I once thought were family. That night, I sat in my room watching the soft glow of streetlights through the curtains. I was no longer the 18-year-old girl, scared and lost after her mother died. I was Mary, 23, educated, employed, and proud. And I began to understand. If I didn't stand up and claim my rightful place, no one would do it for me. Maybe they thought I'd leave quietly. But they forgot something my mother once taught me. Kindness is not the same as submission, and starting tomorrow I would fight back, not with rage, but with determination, and a plan I had been quietly building for many nights. A plan that would make sure they never forgot I'm the only one who has the right to walk through this door without asking. I woke up on a Saturday morning to an unusual silence. No clattering pans, no smell of burnt toast, no pop music blasting. From Hannah's phone, everything was eerily quiet, as if the house had suddenly stopped breathing. At first I thought they had gone grocery shopping or out for breakfast, but as I walked downstairs, I realised something was very wrong. The kitchen was spotless, untouched, not a single cup, not a dirty plate in the sink. The living room was unnaturally tidy. Dad's coat was missing, so were Rachel's and Hannah's shoes by the entryway. I went to the garage. The silver SUV was gone. I pulled out my phone and texted Dad. "Where is everyone?" No reply. I called. It rang, then went to voicemail. Anxiety started to creep into my chest. I tried Rachel, no answer. Hannah's phone was on Do Not Disturb. I tried one more time, this time with a video call. Surprisingly, Rachel answered. The camera didn't show clearly where she was, but the background sound said everything. Waves crashing, tropical music playing, people laughing. Rachel tilted her head, her face appearing on screen. Her oversized sunglasses covered half her face, but I could still see the annoyance behind them. "Mary," she said, clearly not thrilled to see me. "Where are you?" I asked directly. Rachel let out a dry laugh. "Bahamas, sweetheart. Brand new resort, ocean view room, 5-star service. I guess your dad forgot to let you know." I froze. No one said anything. I thought, "Yeah, you thought a lot." She cut in, her voice turning ice cold. "But you need to grow up. A little Mary. We needed a break, not to bring extra baggage." "Baggage?" I repeated, my voice dropping. Rachel took off her sunglasses and looked straight into the camera. "You're living off us, in our house, eating our food, using our utilities, and still acting like you're the owner. You think that can go on forever?" I was speechless. "Your dad might be soft, but I'm not," she continued. "When we return next week, you won't be there anymore. Pack up your things and leave. If you have any dignity left, you won't wait to be thrown out." I opened my mouth to respond, but Rachel ended the call before I could say a word. The screen went black, and I sat there in the house my mother left me, now treated like an intruder. I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I stood up and walked through the house, looking at every item that had been changed over the last 4 years. My mother's wedding photo? Gone. The old antique wall clock she once repaired herself, replaced by a soulless modern piece of metal. The living room, where she and I used to watch weekend movies, had become a showroom for Rachel's. Overpriced vases and Persian rugs that didn't match the house's character. I understood now. This was never about sharing. It was a slow invasion, piece by piece, detail by detail, until they turned this place into their own and erased all traces of my mother, of me. But they underestimated me. I wasn't the 18-year-old girl who used to stay quiet and endure. I was Mary. I was the legal heir, and this time I wouldn't let anyone push me out of the home that rightfully belonged to me. I opened my laptop, found the email from my mother's lawyer, and pulled up the copy of her will. I printed it out. Then I called a moving service. 1 week. I had 1 week to prepare, and I swore by the time they came back, no one would dare call me a freeloader again. I started with the storage room. Each suitcase, every shoebox, every decorative. Item Rachel had brought back from her fancy trips. I packed it all up carefully, making sure not to damage anything, but also without a hint of sentimentality. I wore gloves, labelling every box with their names. R. Miller, Hannah, John. I gathered the piles of random papers they had scattered around the office, Hannah's school flyers, bank letters, even a few unused Christmas cards, and stacked them neatly in the corner of the garage. It took 2 full days to remove every trace of them from each room. I opened the windows, letting sunlight pour into the living room, light that Rachel had blocked for years with her heavy drapes. I took down their tasteless wall art and replaced it with photos of my mum, with an old painting she once made of me as a child, with memories that truly belonged in this space. On the morning of the 3rd day, I called a locksmith. He arrived. Within an hour, tools in hand and a calm smile on his face. All 3 locks, right? He asked, looking around the house. I want every old key to stop working, I said without hesitation. When he left, I held 3 brand new keys in my hand, and for the first time in years, I felt strangely light. No more fear of them sneaking in during the night, no more feeling like a guest in my own home. This was my house, and now every lock confirmed it. I still kept their belongings in the garage. I didn't want to be accused of throwing anything away. I didn't need to do anything wrong, because they were the ones who had been wrong all along. Exactly 1 week later, the familiar silver SUV pulled into the driveway. I had just gotten home from my first day at the new job. As I parked, I saw Rachel standing in the walkway, eyes wide, face flushed with fury. Hannah lingered behind the car, headphones in, but watching every move. My dad stepped out of the passenger seat, pulling a suitcase, his face weighed down like someone returning from defeat. "Mary!" Rachel shouted as I approached the door. "What do you think you're doing? How dare you? You changed the locks. How dare you throw our things into the garage like that?" I stopped at the steps, turned around, keys still in hand. "I didn't throw anything. I organised. Your stuff is untouched. I just took my house back." Rachel laughed, harsh and mocking. "Your house? This has been our family home for the past 4 years. I pulled out the printed copy of the will from my bag, official, notarized. My mother bought this house before she even met Dad. She left it to me. It's under my name, clearly stated in her will. I stayed silent for too long so you could live here comfortably. Not anymore." She turned to my dad. "John, are you really going to let this happen?" He remained silent. Hannah looked away. The air was thick, as if time itself had stopped. "Say something!" Rachel nearly shouted. Finally, my dad spoke softly. "Mary's right. This is her house. We need to leave." Rachel froze, her smug smile disappearing in an instant. She seemed to crumble. "Oh, come on. I didn't mean to actually kick Mary out. I was just upset." Her voice softened in a way that was almost hard to believe. I saw you as family, Mary. You know that." "No," I replied coldly. "You never saw me as family. You saw me as an obstacle." She stepped closer, reaching out as if to hug me. "Mary, I'm sorry. Let's start over, okay? I know I was harsh at times, but I only wanted what's best for this family." I stepped back. "You can do what's best right now. Leave my house." Rachel stood, stunned. My dad bowed his head and quietly pulled his suitcase toward the garage. Hannah stood there, eyes glassy, but said nothing. I opened the door and left them outside. Rachel yelled a few more things about ungratefulness, family, kindness, but I didn't respond. When the door closed behind me, I felt lighter, not because I won, but because I finally said what should have been said long ago. This house at last was truly mine, not just on paper, but in every way that mattered. And from now on, no one would enter unless I said so. Since that day, I no longer heard the clattering footsteps on the stairs in the early morning, no more of Rachel's complaining echoing from the kitchen, no more of Hannah's giggles in the living room while chatting on the phone. The house was quieter than ever, but it didn't feel cold. For the first time in years, the silence brought peace, like the house could finally breathe again. I started my new job at the financial firm just a few days after kicking them out. Though I wasn't emotionally settled yet, work gave me what I had long craved: a clear rhythm, concrete goals, and a reason to get out of bed every morning. Everyone at the office was kind, especially Denise in HR, who always had a few peppermint candies in her pocket and greeted me with a cheerful, "Good morning, Mary," each day. After work, I often stopped by the flower shop near home. I'd buy white chrysanthemums, my mum's favourite, and place them in an old ceramic vase I'd found in the storage room, the one Rachel had tossed into the donation box. I put it on the bookshelf, right beside a photo of Mom smiling brightly under the autumn sun. Some evenings, I sat there in front of her picture, telling her everything that had happened, as if she were still there, still listening quietly, just like she used to. Dad called first from his old number, then from a string of new ones. I didn't answer. The messages came and went from my lock screen. I'm sorry, can we talk? I miss you, Mary, just one call, please. I didn't respond because I'd learned that sometimes wounds don't need apologies to heal. They need time, distance, and closure. Rachel never messaged. I figured she was too proud to lower herself after such a bitter defeat. As for Hannah, once she sent me a photo. It was of the two of us, taken in the winter of my sophomore year. I was tying a scarf around her, smiling while she made a silly face. The message simply said, "I'm sorry." I stared at it for a long time, then turned off the screen without replying. I don't hate Hannah, but I also can't forget the time she called me that girl, or acted like I was invisible. Some things, once said, even out of ignorance or hurt, can cut too deep, and not every wound heals. Instead of dwelling on it, I chose to live. I taught myself how to cook the meals Mom used to make, flipping through her old recipe notebook, with that familiar slanted handwriting. I replanted lavender in the garden, right where she used to grow it, and smiled quietly when its gentle scent drifted into the house each morning. I invited a few old friends over. Katie brought homemade pastries, and Sam, a college classmate, showed up with a guitar and played ballads that had the whole neighbourhood curious. For the first time, the house was filled with laughter that wasn't forced, music that didn't drown out pain, but instead felt real. Life slowly found its rhythm again, but not the old rhythm, a new path, one I carved for myself. Every night before bed, I stepped out onto the porch where my mum used to read during sunset. I don't see her there anymore, at least not in the usual way. But I feel her presence in the peace of this place, in every breeze, every bloom, every quiet breath the house takes. One night, tea in hand, I had a thought. Maybe healing doesn't come from explanations or overdue hugs. Sometimes it begins with letting go of people who once called themselves family, but never truly loved you the way you deserved. I don't regret cutting ties with my father. I don't miss not opening the door for Rachel or Hannah ever again, because I chose myself, and for the first time in my life I don't feel guilty about that. From my own story, I've realised that not everyone connected by blood deserves to be called family. Some people stick around only when there's something to gain, and when there isn't, you become a burden in their eyes. Letting go isn't weakness. It's courage. Courage to protect your peace. I learned to stand up, to take back what was mine, and to live a life no longer built on others' approval. Sometimes peace begins with a firm goodbye. What do you think of Mary's decision? Would you have done the same if it were you? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful and emotional stories about family and life.